It's easier in this country for people to believe what they see on National Geographic than if you portrayed a positive side of Africa. National Geographic is more believable because that is what has been preached here right from the beginning.
As far as the media goes, I take everything with a grain of salt. I don't read it and think that's the facts, although media should probably, well, that's the message it conveys, that you're getting the facts, but I tend not to believe everything I read, see, hear.
Let's say there's a TV show that portrays Kenya as being just a wildlife and people running with giraffes. He should begin to ask himself questions about why are they showing that? Is that really what I as a Kenyan know from my experience in Kenya, what that constitutes?
For the African abroad, it is plain to see. Africa looks bad in the foreign press. No one African can speak for the whole of Africa, yet individual accounts by the Western media have encouraged a very general, one-sided, and negative picture of our continent. It still persists. What does it mean to us? What has it done to us? What can we do about it? Today, the whole issue is up for analysis and discussion.
Right at the beginning, the idea came from the African students themselves, especially the executive committee, who decided that there was a need to reflect the real story of Africans as told by Africans to the African students themselves and to the wider NIU community. So that's why, if you remember, the theme for the first African Awareness Week was The Real Africa. So we wanted to get away from the popular, misguided image of Africa that is held by many Americans and, unfortunately, African Americans who are descended from Africa. We were looking at it from the Pan-Africanist perspective, that we felt that people of African descent would, for cultural and psychological reasons, be interested in finding out, hearing from the real Africans themselves, and would be ready to chip into the project. And following discussions with them, they did actually help out a lot in putting the whole week together. They did provide one or two dance groups whose master instructors had spent many years in Africa, especially Liberia and Senegal, learning from the ethnic groups there, their dances, their culture, and the meaning of those dances. So they came and performed during that time. We also had several panel discussions. One in particular, we tried to pull views from the whole Pan-African world. We had people from the African continent. We had a speaker from the Caribbean, and we also had some African Americans. So we tried to talk about issues that are common to black people across the board.
The United States has temporarily halted food distribution in Haiti after several warehouses were looted. 2,000 Haitians ransacked a warehouse in Port-au-Prince yesterday. Relief workers fear it signals growing chaos in the country as Haitian soldiers abandon their posts at food distribution centers. A U.S. Embassy spokesman says feeding programs for 1 million Haitians will continue.
To boycott the session to protest the presence of U.S. troops in Haiti. The U.S. government's asking relief organizations to stop giving away food in Haiti until the looting and the riots subside. Thousands of Haitians raiding a Port-au-Prince warehouse yesterday beat each other and trampled a woman. Looters have stolen more than 300 tons of food since Sunday. And vigilantes are ransacking the homes of Haitians involved in the crumbling military regime. At least 3 civilian attachés from the Haitian military have been stopped by crowds and turned over to U.S. Marines.
They want to depict the African people in Haiti as a set of barbaric people who are irrational. They link the action to nothing on history. There's no historicity to the action. They're just barbaric, inept people who are just looting. So what we're going to do, we're going to keep the food away from them until they behave themselves.
Before the process starts, there are some images that have developed over the years about Africans. And a lot of coverage is aimed at sustaining those images, validating them, legitimating them. We have to be aware of that.
Again, camel images. And here's some stereotype images. I'm just going to run through some of these again of black women as the mammies. This is what most of us are probably acquainted with.
And as far as black women, I believe that a lot of stereotypes do still exist. I think black women are breaking down the stereotypes and coming into different positions to show that we don't fit into this, all of us do not fit into the stereotypes.
am the most populous country in Africa. I account for 1/4 of sub-Saharan Africa's people. I am 356,700 square miles.
The idea behind the pageant was to promote positive images of young African American women and to bring in our culture while doing so. So a pageant or beauty contest wasn't the key to what we wanted to do. It was just showing our heritage and what we can do for our community and bringing our heritage back to our community.
Blackness is nothing that one should shame, but blackness is something that one should admire. Wake up, my black mothers. Wake up, my black sisters. The time is now to stand tall and be proud of who you are and be proud of one's struggles. Because one's struggles makes one more determined. One's struggles makes one more stronger. And one's struggle gives hope to the future. Wake up, my black mother. Wake up, my black sister. Wake up.
I think it all deals with black pride, so it's not really negative to me, or it's not really seen as a negative thing nowadays, because it's something that we can go back to and say, okay, this is where we came from, the African continent. We might not know exactly where we came from due to the distortions that happened, when we came over here, but we do know that's where our ancestors were.
But which Africa? The Africa which has always been other to Western culture and society? A land to be objectified, explored and exploited? Ethnographic films perhaps helped set a firm foundation for modern media representations of African culture and people.
Beneath the clouded peaks of Africa's mountains of the moon, thousands of years before recorded history, a race of pygmy hunters lived in the twilight of a great forest. In the Ituri rainforest of Zaire in Central Africa, there survives such a group.
These explorer films, posing as anthropological studies, served as some of the early depictions of an exotic Africa, full of wild animals and so-called primitive people. Documentaries like The Hunters, documentaries like Children of the Forest. As an extension of the colonialist ideology, projects like these effectively ridiculed the traditional values and practices of the African peoples they used. Entertainment films like Sanders of the River took the stereotypes to new heights. It was a civilizing effort on the part of the colonialists, bringing light to the dark continent, taming and controlling the ignorant savage. Africa was an ideal site for filmmakers to exploit the exotic while reinforcing colonial attitudes.
Rosambo, if I try you out for 6 months as chief of the Okere, will you serve my king faithfully?
Yes, Lord Sen. Every time I've seen the beautiful face of your great king, my heart has filled with joy.
When have you seen his face?
No. Oh, little round pieces of silver.
How does one explain such representations? How does it translate to the mass media?
My opinion on this is that the root cause of it is in the Euro-American psyche. Their notions of blackness and whiteness. It goes beyond just Africa. It goes to some psychologists and people who've studied these issues have shown that within the linear, logical way of thinking of the European cultures, they do not take easily things that are unknown, and therefore to them Africans, being a dark people, represent the unknown, and from there that creates fear within their psyche, which in turn pours out into all these misgivings about black people and Africans in general.
People are generally curious about what they don't know, and usually trying to understand what you don't know within the paradigm of what you know sometimes it's not the best way to go about it. So most of the Caucasian, European, or whatever you call it, population, it's not grounded in how other societies that are not of their own worldview function. So, but the arrogance built into their worldview says this is always either or. If they are not like us, then they are wrong. And once you approach any given situation from the either or mentality, then you end up with that kind of gross misrepresentation.
Patrice Lumumba comes back to Leopoldville a prisoner. The former Congo premier, who was captured when he fled inland, no longer wears the tuft of whiskers on his chin that helped to identify him. His arrest provoked several clashes between Lumumba followers and Congolese army troops. But Congo strongman Colonel Joseph Mobutu, shown as he watches Lumumba arrive, says he is prepared to put down any uprising. Mobutu enjoys the sight of Lumumba being tied up more firmly for transfer to the garrison town of Teesville. A soldier tries to stuff into Lumumba's mouth a crumpled speech asserting his claim to power. The former premier shows no emotion. It may be the end of a chapter, but not yet the end of the Congo story.
The portrayal of African anything in the Western world, for example, particularly, is something, is a portrayal of that which sells. And given the historical, history tells us that good news about Africa is not news in this country at all. And bad news is big news here. And it sells so much. And so people will always find a way of twisting information or twisting a fact to make it sound negative so it can sell.
This film, still shown on television, continues the tradition of exploitation and misrepresentation through open mockery of a peaceful African people whose practices and values provided comic relief for the target Western audiences.
One day, something fell from the sky.
Not surprisingly, it was the longest-running first-run feature in New York history.
I've never seen anything like this in his life.
It caters to the Euro-American fantasy of what Africa is and of what. And it also shows or gives them the idea, due to misinterpretation, that they are, and their way of life is somehow better than these people's way of life. And well, to the African who watches this without any knowledge, this is very damaging because it shows that his traditional way of life is actually backward. And he should aspire to this new modern one, which they completely misinterpret. And so this can put in an African or person of African descent self-hatred and intensify feelings of self-hatred.
It can be very dangerous. There are people who outright hate Africans because of something they've heard, and they've never even spoken to an African, but it's because of something they've heard. So my dance group and us as members of that dance group, we are kind of the ambassadors of our countries because we do not have politicians here, ambassadors telling everybody this is exactly what the truth is about Africa. So our goal is to be ambassadors and tell exactly that which is in Africa.
It's not time to. No, I mean, but.
The African drum, a traditional means of communication, that which is associated with the spirit, that which speaks to the spirit. The African dance troupe realizes the value of this medium of communication.
We have a few performances planned on campus. One with the College of Music, School of Music, and then one with the community around in Sycamore for the schools around, and one on campus for International Students' Night. And what we intend to do with these performances is just preach the gospel of truth that is about Africa and Africans. Telling it our way. When we dance, it's not just a bunch of idiots jumping around. It communicates. When you see Africans dancing to a drum beat, it's not only the drum that is communicating, but you can see that the dance and the drum together are saying something that the drum alone or the dance alone wouldn't otherwise communicate.
So what else can we do as Africans to combat these negative misrepresentations?
First of all, they have to recognize the distortions that the media portrays and realize the damage that these distortions are doing, and work out ways of supporting or creating alternative media sources that can counteract what the common media is throwing about Africa, and make sure that they all have access to this new information.
So if individual Africans decide to create these institutions and start working internationally within the African subcontinent or continent, for instance, I have a paper in Nigeria with you producing the same corresponding paper in Kenya. So what happened when the government shut down my paper? You will still be publishing the same paper in Kenya, the same information will be going out. So in doing that, we could still be able to reach the African continent that this paper is going to go through. And until we start working on individual and interpersonal level to create understanding of that nature, we will not solve the individual small-scale problems that are structurally placed upon us that are really suppressing us to respond back to imagery like that.
Right. So what you're actually suggesting is that we have to get out of this mindset where I think of myself as a Kenyan and I define myself according to the boundary that Britain put there.
Yes.
And I begin to see the connections between myself and a person living in that territory called Nigeria,
yeah,
and an person of African descent in Brazil,
yeah,
and begin to see the commonalities of the
yes,
experience.
A common experience revealed the need for an alternative newspaper for American students of African descent.
The Lifeline on NIU's campus attempts to get the feedback of all persons interested in the Afrocentric perspective, meaning how do you relate to a world? What's the best way to relate to the world? What history, what information allows you to relate better to the world? Some information makes the world seem at peace. Other information makes the world seem at conflict.
And again, culturally, you've been trained to think that this black folks just in Africa running around naked somewhere. And nobody in this room has seen Lagos, Nigeria, how it's supposed to be saying. These folks are international folks. How many times have you seen West Africa and you actually saw something urban? I will submit to you, most of you have never seen it because they're not going to show it to you. They want you to think, every time you see Africa, you're thinking about these kids dying of AIDS, looking pitiful, starving in some hut, sitting outside somewhere waiting to be fed. That's a myth. It's myth-making.
I think it reinforces their general apathy and rejection of Africa, the continent Africa, the legend Africa, the civilization, and Africa, the people. I mean, it is hard for somebody, even when the people that are a part of it, to identify with that land, that people, that culture.
The misrepresentation has been here for decades, centuries. And so it will take a long time to have everybody educated about what the true African is, what the true Africa is. But it takes wanting to learn about Africa.
The objective really tonight is for us to sit around and talk about issues, talk about problems, talk about questions that we feel are important to Africa, that we feel are important to the future of Africa. So the idea is to highlight trends, to highlight events, to highlight conflicts, to highlight different questions that are very significant, at least we think, are very significant for Africa today.
A lot of us who are from Africa have first-hand information or experience about these things. So when we're listening to media portrayal of these issues, and when we're listening to some of the so-called authorities discuss the things that are fundamentally as well as functionally inappropriate, we think there should be a room where people from Rwanda, like Augustine, whose family has been deeply involved in what is happening there, to air out their own understanding and probably perspective as to what is actually going on, which is most of the time different from what you read in the publications and print as well as electronic media over here.
As they are comparing what happened in Rwanda with what happened in Germany, many books have been written out of that, but Africans or Rwandans themselves are not being used by whoever wants to understand the situation to shed some light on that interpretation.
Well, we get together to share our own views, our own perspectives, our own experiences. In effect, to give balance to dominant portrayals by the foreign media. But sometimes, like now, we have the last word.
I hope you've seen two things that I want to mention as we finish. One is that Africa is not unique. The economic problems, the social problems, the political problems, the ethnic problems, the civil war problems have been experienced worldwide. But I want to say, secondly, that Africa is unique. And I think this is unique of African people. And the uniqueness of African people is a struggle with identity. The impact of colonialism, the impact of the slave trade, the impact of the global economy has had a severe impact on how we think and feel about ourselves. And I think that's the biggest struggle that we have. Thanks a lot for coming tonight.
The last word? In Sierra Leone, it is said, first word, go quote. Whoever puts in the first word wins.